to be able to just go to Public Access America on YouTube and just go ahead and click our playlists. And what we're going to do is put our shows in little playlists. They're live stream versions of the podcasts that we have, including Inspirations Beyond Disabilities, which has a playlist up right now. And in a day or two, this playlist featuring this, our first live stream on YouTube. Hey, we have a comment section. Be respectful, but there's a comment section there, and I will try to be monitoring that as we speak. Thank you for being a part of this. If you follow us on Facebook at Public Access America, then you saw the link to the live stream. Go ahead and click that, and yeah, you can watch on YouTube. It's a great way to connect. It has all the features we wanted, right? So I'm excited that we have a chance to interact. We we do the low vision and blind people forum every Wednesday. That live stream will be also on the YouTube channel hosted by Public Access America. So if you subscribe on YouTube, you're just going to get notifications to let you know when we go live. You can also follow us on Twitter at Public Access Pod and find those tweets there, as well as a whole bunch of other tweets. We've connected with Run for Something, and so these are young Democratic candidates that are going against the 76,000 local radical Republican side of it. And so, yeah, that's what they're doing, and we're helping them. They have a podcast too, Run for Something. Go check that out, please. It's kind of cool, and I like it, so I'm happy they're doing that. We also do World Animal News, which is cool. We always have things like saving sea turtles and um, primate preserves and stuff, because that's really important. We also have a couple tweets that we do every hour. One is in case you're considering suicide. We always have that every hour in our tweets. There's a hotline for it. Some people say it's not the best. Some people say that it worked for them. So if you're feeling some sort of way, follow us on Twitter. Or what I always say is I always hope for retweets on those, because we never know who's suffering, you know? And so just simply by sharing something and giving somebody a little bit of information, you could save a life. So if you can, follow Public Access Pod on Twitter, find that post, as well as our anti-bullying post, which is also a hotline, and it is what you put into it, I would imagine. And if it doesn't work, please let us know. Just comment and let us know that these aren't a good way, and maybe help us find a good way to get people the help they need. So I'm Jason. We're just waiting for Jeffrey, and that was just some house cleaning, because we like to talk, and we like to talk about everything from a nonpartisan point of view. Seeing that this is our first live stream on Twitter, I'll just go ahead and say that I don't really have a party affiliation. I'm supportive of the Democrats right now because they seem to be the ones that are actually doing something. But generally, I would consider myself a progressive independent at this moment, which isn't to say that I don't support Joe Biden. I'm just saying that I'm waiting for him to support me, so my support is tacit and passive. But I am about policy and ideas. And Jeffrey, I'll let him introduce himself when he gets here, but he is yeah, he's full of great information too. I'll let him describe himself. But that's me. And I don't know. What are you? Why do you have to pick a side? That's where I fall, is like, you give me the best policy and I'll consider that. And if it's good for me as an American, but not, I don't care if it's good for me as a Republican or a Democrat. That's not fair. Um, Go check out our episode. It's a great title, and I believe it. And it is, you determine what your party is. Your party shouldn't tell you what you should be. And that's a good episode. And if you visit SoundCloud, you can comment right on the episode timelines, or you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts if you have an Apple device, or Spotify if you have an Android. And we're also on Overcast. Thank you for that, Podcast Addict. They're amazing, by the way. And TuneIn. We're getting a lot of listens in TuneIn, and that's kind of exciting too. Ooh, we have Jeffrey. I'm gonna be like, okay. Boom. And there's Jeffrey. And then we're going to hit record for the podcast. See, all that content you just got wasn't even involved in what the podcast has. Secret. Hey Jeffrey, how you doing?
Yo, what's up?
What's up? I got to tell you right away that we moved our live stream to YouTube, and it has like a little comment section in it and everything. So we're going to try
Nice.
and put our live streams in playlists on YouTube at Public Access America so people can find our live streams because we talk so much and sometimes this stuff gets edited down.
Right.
And so it's cool. And so, welcome to YouTube. I was just explaining to people because it's our first YouTube live stream that I consider myself like a progressive independent. I like to think about policies and I have the stupid ideas that usually cost a fortune. you know, and then I thought I would let you describe yourself because I didn't want to have any of my preconceived notions tossed on you.
Right.
So how are you doing? Why don't you introduce yourself to everybody and then we can just get talking?
Well, what's up? I'm Jeffrey. Long story short about me, born and raised Montanan. Grew up in a very conservative part of the world. Bounced around between some big cities. After college, got my master's in 2017, uh, business intelligence, risk management, data analysis. And I would consider myself like a true middle of the road libertarian. Like I don't consider myself on the right. I don't consider myself on the left. I consider myself a you do you, let people do people, and keep the government out of it as much as possible. That's
Right.
really about it. Like, whatever, there are a lot of things that I truly believe in. Like, there's a reason why there seem to be a lot of progressives and libertarians that have been siding with each other lately.
Mm-hmm.
The it's that there's a lot of common end goals. We just disagree on the method.
I love it.
And that's really where it is that we don't see it as, this, oh God, we can't agree with something the left said, or oh God, we can't agree with something the right said. It's like, yeah, we can look at it and go, yeah, that sounds good, or that sounds good, and then look at the method and go, that don't look good.
Right. And I was just saying one of my favorite podcast titles was "You Don't Wait." I had it. You create what the party is. The party shouldn't create what you are.
Hmm.
And I totally agree with that. If I like some democratic ideas because they're the ones pitching ideas. Like I said, Donald Trump was going to be about policy. I was like, if he puts forth a policy, I will look into it and decide whether I like it or not. I don't care about the man. I care about what he's enacting. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
and I can pick and choose that way. I don't understand being like, I have to be against that because I'm a Republican. It just doesn't make sense to me. You know what I mean?
It's well, and then that's where you get into this whole spectrum of identity politics.
Hmm.
Anywhere from, the evangelical Christian right to the, you can only believe what a person of a certain intersectional group says
Right.
left.
Right.
And the reality is that both of those are dangerous because both sides can have terrible fucking ideas.
Yeah, well,
And
they're repeating their agenda over and over and over in a 24-hour news cycle, and so they have
right,
to have an agenda to repeat. And by
right.
nature, that's dangerous. Yeah.
And really, you can't give credence to one person more than others simply because of their birth status or their experiences or anything like that. I mean, you have to take in the whole and look at how do you move the needle in a way that's
Right.
actually meaningful. And
Exactly.
because otherwise what you end up doing is you end up moving the needle for one group and another group ends up pushing back. And
Yeah.
unless you figure out a better way to move the needle for everybody, you're going to see this constant pendulum swinging back and forth, left and right,
Yeah.
and
And I
and you
think
never get anything done.
what I have a problem with is the election process because what I think it is it's one side just saying be scared of them, give us your money so we can fight them, and the other side doing pretty much the same thing. And all it is we end up paying for a bunch of people's lifestyles that might Not
Mhm.
we should be paying for our own lifestyle and they should just be running, you know. It shouldn't cost billions of dollars to elect a president. If you're a good person, you should get elected, you know.
Well, and ultimately, when it comes to the whole election process, I don't think that we should be funding politicians. I don't,
Uh,
from individuals to corporations.
nope.
I don't think that that's a wise expenditure of money in terms of the fact that you have a bunch of people that are, going to feel like, hey, from an individual status, you're going to feel like, hey, I donated money to X campaign, so this person
Mm-hmm.
is required to give me their attention, and that's not how it works,
No.
because it's always going to go by the amount of money a candidate raises. So while you may have, put out $50 of your hard-earned money on a candidate that you have absolutely love, the reality is that somebody put out 5,000, 10,000, 100,000, half a million, a million
Sure.
of their own money in order to get that candidate's attention. And as much as I would love to say that your $50 really mattered, it doesn't. But I
Mm-mm.
also don't think that corporations should be spending that money on politics, on politicians either.
Agreed.
You know, because the reality is that yes, uh, you know, corporations are going to spend that money because they're going to try and get policies in place that are beneficial to them.
Right.
But the reality is that those politicians are beholden to so many donors, and then they decide to act like they're not. And really, my problem lies with the whole fact that you know there's this conception that, oh no, our elections are free and fair because of X, Y, and Z, and our
Mm-hmm.
politicians work for us. And realistically, I think that if we wanted to make this look accurate, I think politicians should wear jackets like they do in NASCAR that shows us who all their sponsors are, and I can go, yeah,
Yeah.
I like that company, I like that company, I don't like that company, that might sway my decision on them.
Yep.
And realistically, we should have a very, very clear picture of who's sponsoring our politicians. And if you think your politician isn't sponsored by somebody, I hate to break it to you,
Mm.
they are.
Yeah,
You're
check out the FCC. You can just find donations for everybody. You know what I
And
mean?
if you think that, no matter what politician that you have that you support, if you think that they aren't trying to do at least some of their bidding,
Mm-hmm.
you're incorrect
Hey,
again.
that's a great way to say it. It's an analogy. If you want somebody's attention to get something done, you have to give them the larger amount than somebody else had given them for their loyalty. So the man that gives $50 has the loyalty until the man with 500 gets it, right?
Right.
And
Right.
that's how it basically works. And on that NASCAR jacket thing, I believe that if we approve of those things, if you know, then we should get a kickback of that as his constituents, you know. So
Well,
if the guy
the kickback should be that I don't have to pay as much taxes
right,
in order to get this stuff done. Like
right,
like to me, it's one of those things, like, my tax money is already funding all of these different programs, all of these different subsidies,
yeah.
and all of
And
these different
you don't
politicians.
like that though, by the way.
No, I
No.
don't, because to me it's an inefficient expenditure of money.
Yeah, I agree.
It's
I've come around to your conclusion of that because I realize that a lot of the things that I want the government to do, private entities could probably do more efficiently. You know what I mean?
exactly. And the reality is that, while I would like, some type of force moving the needle,
Mhm.
the to me, the reality of taking money from one group of people, putting it into the federal government, who then takes their cut of the money
Right.
before passing it on to whatever the needle is that you want moved, is inefficient, because you could literally just say, if you want your tax break or your subsidy, this is what you have to invest in, and
Yeah.
companies will do that on their own.
And they'll compete. And in the competition, that's where capitalism is. That's how we get the most efficient and cheapest product is because four companies go at the product in the same way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So to me, all money that ends up, pretty much most money that ends up passing through the federal government is waste to me.
Right.
There are projects that the feds do undertake that are necessary. For
Mm.
example, roads. Like
And
roads are a
bridges,
great thing
airports. Yeah.
because those are federally controlled. You are going to have to put money into that in some way, shape, or form. I think that it's possible that private entities could do it better, maybe, but it's not really something that they're doing right now. So,
Right. Right.
um,
Fair
and
enough.
but at the same time too, when I look at what the feds are doing when it comes to infrastructure with roads, which is jack shit,
Well, because
it
they're
kind of
doing
makes
so
the
much on everything else.
it kind of makes the point that, if I'm supposed to be paying taxes for better roads, but I've got, God knows how many bridges that are falling apart in the state of Washington alone,
Sure.
and how many miles of roads that are just deteriorating, what does
Mm.
that tell you?
That tells me that Amazon and UPS and FedEx aren't paying their fair share to put into the infrastructure. They're the ones causing the most damage to our roads, but yet they're not paying anything in taxes, you know?
And that's I think that's definitely part of the issue is that if you're going to tax these entities and then say that it's going to be used for roads and
Mhm.
schools, but my roads are deteriorating, my schools are
Right.
understaffed and undersupplied,
Yeah.
and then what are you really doing with my money? Because if I'm paying the amount of taxes that I am, with the expectation that I'm going to get a certain service quality, like in
Right.
in the business world, if I'm paying the kind of money that I am and I'm getting a low quality, I'm going to go somewhere else.
Right, but you can't because it's the government. And
Exactly.
that's why you
And
need the competition.
exactly. And so, the libertarian in me, like when Domino's decided to do the whole uh pizza for potholes, where they're fixing roads,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
part of me was like, oh, that's really awesome. And then I was like, wait, hold up, isn't the
Yep.
government supposed to be doing that? why
Well,
why
yeah,
are we why are we paying the feds to supposedly, fix our roads, or why are we paying the
right.
state to fix our roads, and then
Yeah.
Domino's is having to go out and do it? That
But
doesn't make any sense.
because Domino's doesn't pay taxes if they give charitable stuff away. So, but that's my problem with every charitable organization from Bill Gates to Domino's is that you're not paying taxes so we can determine how the money is spent. You're choosing the charity that you want to invest in. And that's instead of paying the taxes, pay the taxes and let the government decide what federal programs that should be
That's
invested
but
in,
that's what we're doing right now. And
but they're not paying any taxes and they're just saying, okay, we're going to fill potholes here. But maybe the government is like, no, pay the taxes and we want to fill the potholes that are bad. We'll decide which potholes to fill.
that's just it, though. Then you have to look at what the federal government's going to do. What's the
Hmm.
difference? Where is the federal government going to spend their money fixing potholes outside of Amazon HQ,
Yeah.
or in your minority neighborhood
Yeah,
where the roads are literally crumbling apart? I can guarantee
exactly.
you, I know exactly where that money's going to go, and nobody likes the answer to that question.
And the truth is this stuff doesn't get done because that company that doesn't pay taxes decides to use the money they didn't pay in taxes to lobby the congressman that is going to say no, we don't need that money. And
And
that's the problem. Just pay the
and
taxes.
and thus my problem with the way things are going. To
Right.
me, I would love to see a company become a 501c3 company, and their entire job is fixing roads. And guess what?
Yeah.
Amazon, you want your tax write-off? Donate to this company that's literally out fixing roads.
I like that. That would take the money out of the government. That's
Exactly.
that's cool. That's called regulation, right?
Exactly. I mean, the 501c3 company still has to fix the roads up to whatever the national standard is.
Right,
But
right.
now instead of the government getting the money, taking their administrative cut to pay all of the people who are going to try to award or contract
Mhm.
or whatever, but instead now it's like the feds get some taxes to make sure that the roads and the bridges that get built are up to the federal standard, but the company gets
Yes.
the money directly in order to fix roads. I guarantee you it would probably be a lot better than what we're doing now,
And
because
yeah,
what we're doing now ain't working.
what would be cool about that is like then American in Chicago can fill his truck with asphalt, right? And go
Mhm.
around and be a 501(c)(3) and get government, you know, help to patch roads in his area. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? It doesn't have to just be like Domino's creating a 501c. Like John could create a 503c, get a dump truck and fucking
To me, like, and that's what some people don't realize is, like, when it comes to like corporations. Okay,
hmm
business person here. So when I say 501c3, everybody's like, oh, well, that's just a charitable foundation. They can't make any money. That's not true.
right.
501c3 companies can make money. That is
And
something they can do.
yeah,
They just can't do like stock sales, and they have to show a certain amount of reinvestment into their communities, which,
sure.
guess what? If you're out there fixing our fucking roads and our bridges, I'm going to call that a pretty successful reinvestment into our community,
hmm
especially if what you do ends up creating more access for
Yeah.
people that are in places that are already hard to get to, whether it's rural Americans, whether it's, parts of cities that are, considered, minority, what
Yep.
some people
Yep.
will
Yep.
call hellholes. Or
hmm
I mean, they're not hellholes. This is what happens by design when you relegate a group of people to a specific area, and then you're just like, avoid investing around that area.
Well, that's the problem. You draw the taxes out of that area and the middle class areas to create expansion for the more
Mhm.
prevalent areas. Yeah, that is the exact problem. The communities aren't allowed to reinvest in their communities because there's a overall arching hierarchy that says we're going to invest in expansion.
So imagine if you were to tell Amazon, all right, you want a tax break? Great. Take your $1 billion that you try to invest, put it in
hmm
a 501c3 that ends up fixing roads or bridges or whatever, and those companies will get whatever benefits that they're going to get from fixing the infrastructure in various places.
Yep.
You imagine, one of the things that most people don't think about is the fact that a lot of water systems in this country, are pretty old and outdated. And
Oh,
as
heck
some
yeah.
we've come to find out, some still run lead pipe into the house.
New York has spots where they used logs. They hollowed out logs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have personally dug up sewer systems that were made from clay.
Yep. Me too.
So the idea that somehow we're living in this, completely modernist, infrastructure system is insanely ridiculous, because you've
Mhm.
got people that are literally like, I've dug up septic tanks that were literally just some metal bin that was cut out and just shoved into the ground.
Yeah, and we all know about Flint, right? So,
Right, exactly. And so when you look at what the government should be doing and what it is doing, you see
yeah,
my fundamental problem with money going into the government.
yeah,
They're not doing the job that they're supposedly being paid to do. Yet, when we're out here suffering and wondering whether or not we're going to get our next paycheck, or whether or not your social security benefits are actually going to be available to you next month,
mhm,
they don't have to worry about where their next meal is coming from. And a lot of times they've been there for so long that they have no grounding in reality anymore.
right.
Like, I saw the Washington Post, put an article in about how, Biden's $1,400 stimulus is essentially going to end poverty, and I'm like, what
Wait,
are you
you
on?
the $2,000 check, right?
Yeah, totally. That uh
Totally.
the one that they taped to the bombs that they then shot into Syria. Yeah, those ones.
Right. And if you have 4 kids, by the way, this will help you. You'll get about $24,000. But I want to say that everybody's mad at Joe Manchin because he was what he did for people that were getting unemployment. And I don't know if people realized that that was a problem, that people were getting their tax bills and the people on unemployment that made $10,000 were getting taxed and they owed over $4,000. I've
Hmm.
seen that over and time and again. People that were on unemployment got screwed on the taxes. And that's what
Hmm.
he was standing up for, saying that if it's over, you can't get taxed up to 1,250, I think it was, he got. So a person making $10,000 would not get taxed like that, and that is smart to me, and when I
Hmm.
heard that, I was so like, people were complaining that he stood there for 9 hours and wouldn't budge, and I was like, I've seen those TikToks where people are suffering those tax bills. So thank you, Joe Manchin. You know,
And of course, I'm seeing this, you're watching this fight play out on the left side about, how he's a danger to, the left's agenda and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, sometimes there's some common sense things that are a little bit more centrist, and
yeah,
you just because you think that he's endangering the passage of the bill doesn't mean that, what he's asking for is completely cuckoo.
right. And if the Republicans aren't going to play the Republicans, at least the version of Republican we have to work with is Joe Manchin.
hmm And that's, and to me, the whole thing regarding this giant stimulus package is so funny to me because, the Republicans had no problem passing a $2.2 trillion package.
Right,
They had no problems passing the second round of stimulus bill.
right.
And now suddenly they're wanting to, try and pull the financial conservative card
Hmm.
when people are hurting even more than they were originally.
Yeah, it doesn't matter though. Like what I've realized is the Republicans until they offer a policy, I don't need to even pay attention to them. Like what I'm
Mhm.
considering the right now is Joe Biden, Joe Manchin, Kirsten Sinema. That's
Yep.
what I'm considering the right that we have to work with because honestly, the Republicans are little toddlers in the room shaking their rattle and crying because they're not getting enough water. So let's worry about our right and just dismiss them until they come up with policy, until they say something useful.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's and they're not they're only pretending to be conservative, and really,
Hmm.
their conservative is what I would call a moral conservative, and it's not even a good moral conservative at
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
The it's it's not financial conservative, it's not small government, it's not less deficit spending, it's not any
Mm-mm.
of the things that supposedly made the conservatives conservative.
Yeah,
I
it's a
mean,
post-policy party.
exactly. And so until a conservative comes up with something that actually you know lessens the deficit or
Yeah,
balances the budget,
right. Any
or
any pol- any policy, Jeffrey. I will look into any policy that they have to offer. You know,
Because right now they're not doing it.
they're not.
And the that's the crazy part is that somehow when it comes to our deficit spending, the Democrats had been better at
I know.
deficit spending when they're usually the worst at it.
Yeah,
So like this,
but
like
you.
I've talked about many times, I honestly think that we need as a government to have the Warren Buffett standard, which is anytime your spending is, anytime your budget is off by more than 3%, Congress doesn't get to go home. They don't get paid
Yeah.
until they fix the budget. And I honestly do believe that at the rate we're going to see austerity measures in this country at some point.
Mm. But you said it, and I don't want to get too far from the point. And it was about the clearest thing, the way to describe it is that Republicans give money to corporations and Democrats give money to people. And exactly because of how they fundraise.
hmm
Republicans get money from corporations, and Democrats generally get money from individuals. But now, corporations are saying we don't want to side with insurrectionists, so we're not going to give you money. So now Republicans are turning to small dollar donations, which is all going through Donald Trump because 74 million people voted for him and are donating to his PAC instead of to Kevin McCarthy or, these
Right.
Louis Gohmerts. And so now these people, that's what they have to do. And that's why we are where we are. So I don't want to pay attention to them. I like the way things are going this way. You know what I mean? We're working on something.
Right. And I really think that the spending that corporations do has to be reined in, because
Of course.
you think about how many companies have said, well, we can't pay $15 an hour
All
because
right.
X, Y, and Z, and then you watch them go out and spend, a few $1 million on a candidate, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, I think your problem is that you're too busy trying to change the law or get legislation in your favor than you are caring about your employees.
Yeah.
I mean, it shows. It was, it was like Papa John's like 5 years ago or something like that. How, or no, it was right when Obamacare, the ACA was rolling out,
Mm.
and they were talking about how they weren't going to be able to have as many employees because, this is essentially going to bankrupt the company. And then they were like, we're giving away 10 million free pizzas. And I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, uh-huh, okay. Yeah, I totally believe you. No, I don't.
I mean, no,
Um,
the reason Amazon is so profitable is because it doesn't have to follow regulations. It gets to lobby instead of paving our roads, and it doesn't have to pay a fair wage and support unions. That's why, because corporations growing up until the 80s or 70s had this opportunity of competition where the government like stayed out of it, but suddenly it was like a corporation came up and said, "Hey, can you get involved here? I'll give you 20 grand." And the guy was like, "Cool," and made a law. And it kept going that way. It was like this run for politicians. And every corporation said, "I don't have to work as hard as I can just get the table tilted my way." And so what they did was started enacting policies that hurt workers and benefited them. And so they created these wild profits, but that's because they're not reinvesting in the things that they think they should be reinvesting in, not stock buybacks, union wages, and like healthcare. That's what other people used to pay that corporations don't do anymore.
well, and one of the weird things that you've seen is this crazy focus on quick short-term growth
Hmm.
versus long-term sustainability.
Yeah.
Because the idea is that if you can corner enough of the market right away, then you will create long-term stability. The problem with that is that Amazon's long-term growth focuses on a significant supply from China.
Mm. Yeah.
I guarantee you that if anything were to happen with our relationship with China, Amazon's value would plummet faster than you could ever imagine.
But they still have all their other outlets, you know what I mean?
Well, they would have to create different supply lines in order to make that happen. They've got the
Mhm.
money to do it, and if they're wise, they're hedging that bet
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because China isn't exactly playing friend to us right now.
Right, but Mexico is, and we've talked about shortening our supply lines for better
Absolutely.
independence. So, yeah,
Investing in our neighbors,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's kind of a crazy idea when you think about it. I mean, it's really not, but if you have a problem with people coming across the border to find work here,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a problem with communists,
Yeah,
you could take the buildings, the stuff that you're building in China,
yep.
create good work in
Yeah,
Mexico where
and lim
people would want
yeah,
to where people would want to potentially stay,
but yeah,
reinvest in our neighbors, and
eliminate that supply chain cost of transportation and shipping, and invest that into the slightly higher wages and regulations that you're going to have to pay in Mexico.
exactly. And at some point, the relationship with China is going to sour. I
Of
guarantee
course. Well, that it's built to, right? Isn't
it.
it?
It's funny because like you're starting to see a push on uh, whether or not what's happening to the Uyghurs is genocide, and overwhelmingly people are saying, yeah, it is,
It's something, that's for sure.
and it's starting to really get people's attention.
Hmm.
Do you continue to allow products to be bought from a country that is being genocidal?
Right.
I mean, I hate to say it, we've got our own problems here too. You know,
We have to
it's
stand for something, though. There's a certain level of humanity that we need to support and defend.
you've watched as Hong Kong has been,
Hmm.
pretty much stripped of what was promised.
Right.
You're watching, this Uyghur detention
Yeah.
and systematic in torture. You're,
Taiwan, you know.
yeah, China is threatening Taiwan. Taiwan, of course, is, it's nice to see that we're reaffirming that, Taiwan is our ally, but
Yeah.
you know, even still,
Yeah, we shouldn't have to. China shouldn't have gotten that far. We
but
what
that's but that
that's
is that is the genuine problem with communist governments, though.
Yeah.
They say they're going to do something until they decide it's ours, and then they're going to take it.
Oh yeah, and it's like to me, it's like a global election. It should be like, what do you want, country? New Zealand? Do you want socialism, capitalism? Do you want communism? Would you like some fascism? You know, and then the country basically says we want this, and they go with that. That to me is how it should be. It shouldn't be like communists coming in and saying, "Hey, now you're communist," and people like, "What?" I don't like that. So that's what I defend: the free choice of the people to make the
Hmm.
decision on what they want.
And that's and therein lies the next rub is that I'm inherently distrustful of most governments.
Of course.
Some governments more than others. I don't trust communist governments, period.
You need a
I don't.
philosophy, though. You need a base philosophy, I think.
My base philosophy is that, when it comes to the government, the more power a government has, the more they're willing to wield it against its people.
Okay.
And until the government gets its scare that, they are working for us, not
Hmm.
for themselves or for corporations. That's why a lot of people were like, "Oh yeah, January 6th, this is fantastic. We're showing the government." No, you weren't.
No, no, you weren't.
You literally stormed the Capitol to try and ensure that one person remained in power. That is literally the antithesis of 1776.
Yeah. Yeah.
That we kind of told, King George to go fuck himself for a reason,
Yeah.
and you're sitting there, waving these flags and trying to keep a person in power. Um,
They're figuring it out, though. That's the cool thing.
no, they might be figuring it out when their ass is sitting in a jail cell.
Well, that's the point is the King George, the King George they sided with is like, who are they? I don't know them. But keep giving me your money while you're in jail. And I think they're realizing it that like
Mm.
the fun's over. And I knew that after Donald Trump, there would be this withdrawal period where people were like, no, little babies about it, but they're going to come around, you know?
But the biggest thing though is that the people have to keep his name out of their mouth. The
Yeah,
media is I mean,
agreed.
constantly talking about him.
Hmm.
And as I've told several people, I'm like, keep saying his name, keep
It's like
keep him
it.
in the forefront, keep.
It's it. He's it, right? The more you give it credence, the bigger it becomes.
Mhm.
Yep.
And so if you keep this up, I guarantee you that come 2024, you will see him run again.
Hmm.
And the Democrats better make sure that they've put like they need to start now. If Biden is not running again, which yikes, um,
Yikes.
if Biden is not running again, then they need to be figuring out who's going to be next to run.
Yeah.
Is it going to be Kamala Harris? Is it going to be a Pete Buttigieg? Is
And
it going to be a Stacey Abrams?
I want to say that like the media focusing on the Republicans so much actually gives Democrats cover to do less than they expect, like than we expect, because it makes less news. Because
Hmm.
Trump is making news instead of the Democrats taking $100 away from your unemployment. You know what I mean?
Right. And on top of that, it's like when you look at what the Democrats are doing, it's like this is where I have a severe problem with the media. I didn't like it when Trump bombed Syria. That was a bad
Oh
decision.
yeah, let's talk about that.
I didn't like it when Trump bombed Syria because there was no goal to this.
Right.
It was a barrage of Tomahawk missiles. Gave
Mm-hmm.
ourselves a pat on the back that we, put a couple of holes in an airfield, but we gave
Right.
the Russians a bunch of warning to let the Syrians know that we were going to bomb their airfield. Now, flash forward 4 years, and guess what we did? We bombed Syria. And the media has been like, this is the right thing to do, and blah. And I'm like,
It was the
so,
least response. He picked the smallest response possible.
and the focus on, well, he Biden changed his directions on what should be struck because he didn't want to kill women and children. I'm like,
Yeah.
so the same thought pattern and power that was being exercised by the previous guy was terrible,
Mm-hmm.
and this side it's okay. Like your
Right.
problem is only with party, not with what the actual object is.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be bombing Syria, period. Like
Mm.
I don't like. Syria is a lost opportunity that we had 10 years ago. We had an opportunity to work with the Russians in order to remove Assad and
Mm-hmm.
get a different government in. And because we said, no, we want this done our way, that opportunity left.
Here's our red
And
line. Yeah.
and since then, we've been like doing the hokey pokey with Syria, where we're in, we're out, we're in, we're out, we're
Yeah.
dancing around,
Right.
and we throw a couple of bombs in there and
Mm-hmm.
piss off everybody.
So we're
Like,
we're aiming for Iran, by the way.
which let's be
Yeah.
realistic
My
here.
my
I think
problem with
Israel's gonna deal with that here
my
soon.
problem with it is you should have a policy in place so when you get bombed, you retaliate immediately at that point. Like that's how it works. That's how defense works, but not like 28 days later, we considered something and we decided to do it. What? You don't do that. Like you couldn't do that to a child, right? Like if they cried one day, you would go 28 days later and then spank them for it. They wouldn't get it, right? I don't
Right.
That's what I don't like. Like tit for tat is fine with me. And I don't like the waste of our military complex, but I really do love the fact that they're fighting the fight over there and monitoring over there so I'm safe here. I just don't like the waste in the military complex. You know what I mean?
And that's the greatest problem of all is the waste.
Yeah,
Is
totally.
because what is going to happen with these strikes?
Mhm.
You know, our biggest problem has been our short-term memory. In that it's like, oh, we did a thing and magically we've made it all better, only for the next generation to remember what we did to them slash their parents and
Yeah.
be pissed at us.
Right.
So ISIS was the direct result of our actions in Iraq,
Mhm.
not just the most recent Gulf War, but the first one as well.
Yeah.
You
No, I
know,
believe that. The Taliban and Al Qaeda and then ISIS, they're different. They're generational, right?
and you had the Mujahideen who fought the Soviets, and now you've got the
Yeah.
Taliban who fight us. And the reality of it is that the more you keep bombing some of these places, like let's be realistic about what this looks like. Our relationship with Vietnam is a lot better, but
Mhm.
for 20 years we spent a lot of time bombing the hell out of their country,
Yeah. Agreed.
and that did not work. And so here we are. Afghanistan is our own Vietnam. Not as many deaths,
Yeah.
surprisingly, but this this war in Afghanistan is 1 year away from being legally eligible to drink.
No, yeah.
That's insane. That is the definition of insanity, in that what we have done has not worked. There were no clear goals. We did not even look at changing how the goals worked. We went in, we made a mess, we've made some half-hearted attempts to pull out, only to not. And there we are, we're still there.
Well, the first Gulf War, Saddam Hussein, he was a landlocked country and he wanted access to the Gulf. And so all he was doing was literally straddling the line between Iran and Kuwait, trying to get a path so that he could sell his oil. Like, you know what I mean? And I know there's a lot of other complicating factors in there, and some of it was like attacking Iran just to get them to attack Kuwait, so Kuwait would attack Iran, which was stupid. But his goal was literally to get access to a port. And I don't know if I can blame him as much for that. And then the US decided to
Well,
side
the biggest
with
the biggest problem with what Iran did was it wasn't that. Like, Iran had the ability to sell its oil. The biggest problem that
no,
was
Iraq though.
happening, the biggest problem, or Iraq, the
Yeah.
biggest problem that Iraq had was that they thought that the Kuwait government was drilling under and across borders to get
Mm,
Iraqi oil,
okay.
which was not the case.
Right.
And so, they had just lost their asses to Iran and were broke as a joke. And
Right.
Kuwait's got a good oil supply. So, you know, here we go. Boogaloo
Okay.
too.
And Boogaloo too, right? But yeah.
And that didn't work out. But we had a
Originally,
very clear objective in the first Gulf War, which was to get Saddam out of Kuwait.
but the thing was, I just wanted to finish that thought, was that like Iraq bombed Iran to get access, and then Iran bombed a vessel that was Iraqi, and so America decided, wait, bombed a Kuwaiti, something like that. Iran bombed the wrong people, and then America said, no, we have to protect our oil, but it wasn't ever our fight. You know what I mean? It wasn't ever our fight, and we just jumped into it and decided to put our flags on vessels so they could get through the Gulf because Iran was attacking Iraq instead of, I don't know, like a Japanese vessel or whoever was like getting oil from Iraq. Iran was bombing them so that they could stop Iraq from having money to support the war against Iran,
I
which
would
is something
s-
we would do, you
I would
know?
say that the first Iraq War was the last time that we were ever really asked to come in and help, because
Yeah.
that was a multi-Arab coalition that we led.
Mm-hmm.
And since then we just kind of did our own thing, and
Yeah, right.
that's that's a terrible way to fight a war. Is like, when you look at our most successful campaigns, our most successful campaigns were us being asked to come in and help,
Mm-hmm.
and with a broad coalition of support. And sometimes we had some strange bedfellows in
Yes.
that fight, like World War II, like us and the Soviets fighting on the same side.
Mm-hmm.
Whoo! Under
Yeah.
any other situation, that would have never happened. But Hitler's
Right.
regime was a fucking problem.
Yep.
So, you look at some of these other you look at some of these other wars. Korea was a rough one. Um,
Yeah.
Vietnam, well, that went poorly. But the first Gulf War was the last one where we really had a true coalition that
Mm-hmm.
was united to deal with Iraq.
Right. I'm
And it
just
had a
saying
very clear goal,
that
unlike some of these
Iraq
other wars.
Iraq was an enemy that didn't need to be a full-blown enemy. I mean, they could have used, I think they should have used a little more diplomacy to try and find out what the problems were and how to address that. But it was like, I don't, yeah, I get it. It was a confrontation that they didn't de-escalate, they just protected. And they should have done both maybe. But that's a long time ago, and I'm not second guessing, like what I know from history, because there's always other details
Oh, there's a
to
lot of
it that
other
I don't
details.
understand.
But the point is that 20 years later, you shouldn't be fighting the same war.
Agreed. But now you want mining rights and you want to prevent China from and Russia from having inroads into the area. So you need a force there. But I think you should leave it up to NATO to put those forces, and I think you should offer support to NATO. You know what I mean? Because like you
That's the
said,
problem.
the
That's the problem,
coalition.
though. We're NATO for the most part.
Yeah, but they've invested more, and I honestly think that
Hmm.
there's yeah, there's countries dying. Australia, New Zealand, Germany, France. They all have England. They all have support forces. It's just
Absolutely.
we want to double the forces so that we can be in control of that situation. And
And to me,
okay,
that's a terrible strategy, because being the world police is not a lucrative strategy. It's very cost heavy.
mm,
And ultimately, the thing about a military industrial complex is that it needs a fight.
yeah. But I think the United Nations should be just as heavy involved. Like if you're going to send troops in, you should be sending a proportionate amount of delegates, right? Like
Mhm.
diplomacy as well. It shouldn't be all the hammer and not the velvet.
Right, exactly. And that's a whole nother conversation in and of
Yeah.
itself.
Well, I love diplomacy. I love finding it out because we all have common ground. You can go to Budapest and say, "Hey, so what do you need?" Well, I can't do that, but I know a guy that can. You know what I mean? And it goes from there. It doesn't have to be, "Wait, why are you killing each other?"
And I mean, that's the biggest problem right now, is that diplomacy takes too long,
Yeah.
whereas bombs work now.
I don't know. I mean, I like the slow grip of what we're doing with tariffs and on Russia. You know what I mean? I love it, and I love like the sanctions and stuff that we're putting on Saudi Arabia. It's a good first step. It's a good warning. I expect more from towards both, you know. And I would like to mention that like Egypt and China, you guys, we need to stop paying the government of Egypt to like murder people. Okay, like, and we should stop supporting countries like that are killing and oppressing other countries. We shouldn't be giving aid to that. We should be having diplomats in there.
And then that's really the weird part about this is like the aid that we give is so crazy. Like for example, like some of the aid we give to Pakistan, I believe, is supposed to be like for operating girls' schools. I don't know that I necessarily believe that that's happening.
Right. If you want to give more money to Pakistan, give less to Israel, right? Doesn't that balance out?
Yeah, or actually be smart about how give your money to organizations that are actually in those areas working and doing those things
Yeah.
rather than to giving those funds to governments who are going to tell you, oh yeah, no, we totally invested that in girls schools, meanwhile their military is
Hmm.
getting bigger.
Yes,
i
exactly.
I don't inherently trust really any government, and that's the thing. Even our own government has been proven to do things that are really shady, as we
Oh, I
saw
agree.
with Prism. Why spy on a certain group of people when we can spy on everybody?
Hey, I don't care.
Oh, as
Puts
I've
me
told
above.
people, it's like, look, I say the stuff that I do in my private messages because if they're going to spy on me and then take me to court, I want somebody to read the crazy shit that I say
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
record.
Me too. In fact, I did that with a tweet with Adam. I was like, "Yep, so we're gonna start a bunch of podcasts, and we're gonna become the voice of the people, and they're not even gonna know we were coming, and then we're gonna build up an audience, and then we're gonna kill them all." And he was like, "Did you just post? Did you just put that on in a text?" And I was like, "Yeah, because if the government comes after my texts, I want them to read this stuff."
It's so funny because like I was reading. Oh, this was actually a really funny event, and I forget when it happened, but somebody apparently was being listened in on, and they had sent a message saying that they were gonna, it was like, blow up a Taco Bell
Hmm.
or a Burger King or something like that because they had just eaten, they were eating there and their stomach was rumbling, and
Oh,
what they
wow.
meant was they had to take a gnarly shit, and they end up getting like some fucking police force sent on them because they're like, I'm gonna blow up a Taco Bell, and meanwhile it's when I say I'm gonna blow up a Taco Bell, it's because I have some severe intestinal distress.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I get that. But I don't, there's no, what is it, privacy. There's no freedom. There's no privacy. Everybody knows everything. And if they don't, it's because it never left your head. And maybe that's the way it should be. Maybe everything that's public should be public. You know what I mean?
Well, and the whole discussion about what is uh a reasonable privacy law is so out in the open because it all depends on what you want to be private and what you don't.
Yeah.
Everybody has their machinations of what privacy should be. Some people think it's, I should be able to talk to people and not have to worry about what the government is reading, that the government's reading anything. There's a group of people that say, I want privacy for myself and for my family, but we need to make sure that those gay people aren't doing things in their own bedroom. That I'm like, wait, 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 wait. No, no,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. Or it's
Yeah. No,
the
I get
idea the idea that privacy is a universal standard right now at this point is, just it's purely political. Privacy is what you want it to be on your side of the spectrum.
what you were tricked into giving away too. You're never going to get that data back from Facebook. You know what I mean? The world knows who you are. I just think, I mean, and it's me because I'm a very vanilla sort of person. If they want to put a little tracker in me and it'll let them know when I'm dead, if it, or what my insulin levels are. And that's what led me to this whole epiphany. Like, if they wanted to put something on me that could just send me a medication when my blood pressure was consistently too high. But then I was like, no, I'd rather a private corporation did that. You know what I mean? Like, that to me would make more sense. So that's where I was on that.
And the idea, that's like, for example, Neuralink, where you're supposed,
Mm-hmm.
potentially going to be able to interface with computers at the brain level. Like, as someone who struggles to see out of their left eye but has perfect vision in their right eye, I would love to know what my world looks like with two eyes.
Yes, me
I think
too.
it would be fantastic. I know that, you have felt that way. Or, for people who have, are hard of hearing or have lost their hearing, being able to
Right.
interface like that. Imagine being able to pick up sound from your phone or your microphone, and be able to have that transmitted into your head. Or, for people who are unable to speak, have the ability to take, your thoughts and be able to transmit them out a speaker that you wear. I mean, the
Yes.
reality is that we're getting closer, which of course then begs the question of, are people ever going to be able to see what happens in my mind? Because there's some weird dreams that I would love for some people to see, and there's some real messed up ones that are going to
See,
make people wonder if I'm, completely bonkers.
that's just it. It's like I'm so vanilla that it wouldn't even phase me if somebody knew what was in my head, you know what I mean? And so I don't see it from the point of view of needing to protect myself. I'm pretty open that way. I have 3 podcasts and we talk about 2 hours an episode, so it's not
Right.
like a private person, but I guess people are. I guess, and I wouldn't want people in my head now that I'm thinking about it, you know?
There's, I think that there is a reasonable expectation that we should have, that, what transpires in our own home that isn't harmful to somebody else,
Mhm.
you shouldn't be of concern to anyone,
It should never.
corporations, individuals, government. It
We
shouldn't.
had we had that conversation on Denton County Collective, and Ryan was saying that like a cake baker has every right to refuse a gay couple service, and I was like, no, but just because somebody does something different in a bedroom shouldn't determine how they're treated outside of that bedroom. And he was like, no, the marriage aspect is the issue. And I was like, well, yeah, I get that if you don't approve of the marriage, but you never disapprove of the couple because it's just somebody being happy. And please, we need to stop that. We need to stop judging people based on our morals when everybody has their own set of morals, you know?
I think, and as I've talked about, limiting who you do business with, because of certain
Hmm.
things, is in this day and age, is a dangerous thing.
Yeah,
Because, for example, if someone doesn't want to bake a cake for a gay couple, great, he has every right to do that. But that
right.
gay couple also has every right to post, this person will not bake cakes for gay people, and
Yep.
they are going to lose the business of any gay person that they
Right.
weren't going to participate in anyways. But they're going to lose the business of the straight people who are like, I was considering getting my cake from you, but now I'm not.
Right.
Maybe they'll gain some business from the people who are like, yeah, no, we're gonna. But this weird intersection lately of personal politics and company
Hmm.
is harmful to businesses. Like, for example, when the Berea pasta thing happened, where, I think it was Berea, where they were their owner was like, yeah, no, we don't need gay couples eating our pasta, and
Wow.
it blew up on Twitter. This was like 2013, 2014. So a bunch of people, started asking around, hey, I'm gay and I need a pasta, who am I going to turn to?
Yeah.
And so people, ended up like on Twitter with Ronzoni, I think it was. And Ronzoni's like, look, we just make pasta, eat it or don't.
That's perfect.
Great. And since then, Berea has actually transformed their company a lot to be, much more open and friendly to the LGBT
Okay. But
community.
there's Hobby Lobby, there's Chick-fil-A, there's these
Exactly.
companies that make the stands and yeah, the free market determines it. That's where we were getting into
Hmm.
was cancel culture and how they're kind of using what's happening in capitalism to fight the Equality Act through blaming Democrats for cancel culture that what is really just, I think it's just the churning of nature. You're whitewashing certain things and creating other things, and that is the story of America constantly reinventing itself. So I don't think it's cancel culture. I think it's capitalism. And
Cancel culture does not equate to uh what's the word I'm looking for? Consequences. Cancel culture and consequences are two very different things.
yes, okay,
You and that's and I think Republicans have forgotten what that means. You know,
nice.
what is cancel culture versus what are consequences? Cancel culture is one time I said something stupid and I should, and I have to, I can't have a platform to speak anymore. That's cancel culture. Or, hey, I did something and somebody else deems it questionable, so I should not be able to have a platform to speak.
Oh, Michael Richards,
That's
right? Michael Richards.
that's
Yeah,
yeah, that's well, that's in a sense that's cancel culture. Cancel culture does not allow you to revisit what you've done and make amends through restorative justice.
interesting. Okay.
Cancel culture is just about taking somebody off the air and not allowing them to a learn from their mistake, b actually do something restorative to the community that you've harmed and move forward to be a better person. There are some things that are going to get you canceled. Being a sex offender is going to get you canceled. But
Okay.
therein lies the rub. It's the rectangle and square argument. A square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square.
Kevin Spacey is a sex offender, and yet he's not canceled. He's revered.
You know,
Roman Polanski was a sex offender, and he's revered.
but and there's the issue is that when you cancel someone, is it because of consequences of their actions? Like
Hmm.
if you do something severely harmful to the community and you refuse to do anything to make it better,
Right.
those are the consequences of your actions and you are going to get canceled.
Yeah, I don't think there's a cancel culture. I think it's all consequence or capitalism. You know,
I, that's
honestly.
I think the issue at hand though is that cancel culture is more based in drama than it is actually in consequence. It's just that, you know, when there's consequence, there's also drama. So thus why you can have two things at once. Like, for example, Al Franken. Was Al Franken consequence or was it cancel culture?
Consequence.
See, another say cancel culture.
What
And
I think
and
I think what you're
and
talking about is a real issue, Al Franken, and then
mhm,
the crowd behind it that's looking for the next Al Franken. Like there's a real thing, and I don't believe Al Franken. I just don't think he should have done what happened shouldn't have happened. I didn't like that. But it
mhm,
was a group of maybe he was the group looking for the next sex offender because there was a real issue. Harvey Weinstein was a real issue, but
mhm.
the trickle down and variance of that led to a fringe that was a cancel culture of questionable things.
So the problem with Al Franken is that there was photographic evidence of what he did.
What did he do?
So what happened is that after like a some USO tour, there
Hmm.
was a female service member who was asleep on the airplane, and there's a photo of him acting like he's groping that female service member.
Right, right.
So to me, that's consequence, pure and simple. You did something that you thought was funny. It
Hmm.
actually wasn't funny. It was sexual assault,
Yeah. You
and
can't you
you
can't
get to pay the consequences for that.
But
That
you
you
can't
didn't get.
determine the consequences of your actions. You can only determine your actions. Something else determines consequences, not you. So
So
yeah.
cancel culture in this case would have been like, for example, Roy Moore, who has been accused multiple times of, being a creepophile,
Right.
but there was no evidence of it. And
Right.
and
Right.
as much as I believe that he probably did it, there was just no evidence of it. But a group of them want him canceled because, they've heard the stories. There were some terrible things done.
Mm-hmm.
Cancel culture is going after people regardless of whether or not the accusations are warranted.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think in Roy Moore's case, they're absolutely warranted because there's so many people that came forward saying that he was a problem.
Okay.
But when you have cancel culture, though, a lot of the times you have speculation, you have rumor mills, and you don't ever really get any clear understanding as to what's happening. It's a lot of drama.
Mm.
Consequence has a defined action and a defined repercussion. You
Yeah.
do something awful and you get busted, you're going to have to pay the piper. Period. End
Okay.
of story.
So it's all consequence. It's not. It's not at all cancel.
That's the biggest problem is I haven't seen anything that is actually cancel culture. It has been
Right.
consequence of action.
Yeah. Right.
Cancel
Like.
culture is like YouTubers who are, stirring the pot with each other because it gets eyeballs. And in the end, they still end up with the same amount of viewers. They're
Yeah.
making more money off of their videos because it's all a drama fest.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't actually have a defined harm and a defined repercussion and a defined piece of reconciliation.
Yeah.
It's just you're trying to get someone off the air.
Or just to get more listens and views than that person. I'm thinking of, see, there's this arc that people are forgetting about Mr. Potato Head, and it's generational. I'm I was born in the 70s, right? So
Hmm.
my Mr. Potato Head was one box with a bunch of parts in it, you know? And I didn't realize because I was older by then that they had divided the boxes into male and female boxes. But it's my belief that the potato is always just inherently genderless and you pick the parts that you want to put on. And
Hmm.
honestly, in my day and age, I was using whatever parts were funniest, you know? And so
Right.
to me, mixing and matching was what to do. I didn't have just female stuff to add or just male stuff to add. And so I never saw that. I don't care. Mr. Potato was always Mr. Potato. It was just the potato head, you know?
Right. And to me, it was one of those things like looking at them like from a business standpoint. Oh, great. They're just going to have potato head. They're going to have all the pieces,
Yeah,
and people get to decide what potato head looks like. They
right.
don't have to have these two separate production lines of boxes for Mr. Potato
Mhm.
Head and Mrs. Potato Head. It can just be
Yeah,
potato head, and whatever you put together is whatever you put together, and it doesn't really matter.
yeah.
But people lost their fucking mind over it, and it
I
was
mean,
just
yeah,
absolutely insane. I'm like, from a marketing perspective, I think it's great. From a production perspective, I think it's great. You're literally just creating one object, one
yeah.
sales point.
But they're not adding genitals in the box. You know what I mean? Like here's your female genitals, here's your male genitals, here's your female breasts, here's your male pecs. They're not doing that to the potato. It's
Here's
still
your here's your
I'm
fleshlight add-on.
because I'm really sorry because you know some people like to do their nails. Some people like to put on makeup, and that's a male or a female thing. And I just don't
Hmm.
see where that's an issue. If I want my potato head to have boy pants, but like girl eyebrows, eyelashes, I don't see where that's a thing. And so,
It's a thing because there are people out there that think that somehow you're training the next group of people to be transgender or whatever crazy
you
fucking idea that they have. Or, you just let people play with potato head, and they
do
do
what
what
they
most
want.
normal people, they do what every other kid does. They play with it for a while, it gets shoved into a toy box, and they don't ever touch it again.
Right. But nothing says that you can't put your Barbie doll in GI Joe clothes, right? Like people do with what they have what they want.
Hmm.
I used to play with my He-Man dolls with my cousin because I was stuck at the house for 8 hours while my mom and aunt played, and I would play in the Barbie house with He-Man and Skeletor and Barbie and Ken. And so to me, I think they're making a fuss out of nothing because Potato Head was always just a potato.
But that's the conservative standpoint right now,
Right.
and where this faux moral conservative thing comes in. They think that there's some sort of destruction of the nuclear family that the left is trying to rain down upon America, and it's like,
Mhm.
no, it's the acceptance that your version of the nuclear family works for you, and you
Right.
don't need to be shoving that down anybody else's throat.
Mhm.
People are people. People are going to, going to go for what they want
Yeah.
inherently, and it is not your position to force that upon anybody. Great. You know what? If you want your kid to have a quote unquote Mr. Potato Head, take all the girl parts out. Voila,
Mhm.
Mr.
Yeah.
Potato Head. Or you want your kid to have nothing but the girl parts for Mr. Potato Head. Take out all the boy parts. Bam,
Sure.
Mrs. Potato Head. Or you can be a realist and be that, sit down and say, great, I don't have to buy two separate toys. I can just buy one.
Yes, and I will have information about my child based on what they want and play with and how they do that so that I can better understand my child. Instead of,
Mhm.
oh, I just found out my child is gay at 30. You know what I mean? Like
But
that's what it is. It's determining who people are at an early age so that we can allow them to be who they are. Because some things, and I'm sorry, get phased out, and other things become who we are. And sometimes, after a point, the combination of everything we've been becomes who we are. And
mhm.
so things that phase out phase back in and become smaller parts of our lives. And we need to give people the room to do that.
Yeah, exactly. This whole dictation of what your child is or isn't is just essentially the new form of helicopter parenting.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like for example, this whole issue regarding, you know, like the right is losing their minds over this whole 3 million kids have fallen behind in the online learning environment. I'm like, question, is this 3 million new kids that have fallen behind in the online environment? Because this sounds to me like we're trying to blame online schooling. So let me ask you this. If we're going to blame online schooling, does that mean that homeschooling isn't viable anymore? Because there's a lot of people who are online homeschooled.
Mhm.
Is that what we're going for here? Are you trying to tell me that it's the internet that's making kids fall behind? Is it not the teachers that are not adapting to the online learning environment? Or is it that, the parents, once again, aren't around checking in on their kids, making sure that they're doing their schoolwork, making sure that they're asking for help when they're getting stuck? And rather than, sit down and say, parents, you're not being involved in your children's education, we're looking to blame someone, anyone else other than ourselves. Look, you got to investigate what it is. With my kids, I have some teachers that have not adapted well to the online environment.
Mhm.
And I've had some teachers that, that they've done better. There have been times where my kids have fallen behind, and it's my job as a parent to, make sure that they get caught up, make sure that they're talking to their teachers, asking questions. You
Mhm.
now have the chance to meet remotely with your teachers in a way that you haven't had for some kids who have struggled with the notion of going to the front of the class to ask the teacher for help, have found some solace in being able to talk one-on-one with their teacher either through the chats or in person
Yeah.
on a platform like this, where it seems easier to ask for help. Some students have struggled with that,
Yeah.
and the reality is that if you're not trying to problem solve why your kid is falling behind, that is on you as the parent.
Yeah, and there's a lot
it's
of it.
it's the new it's the new video games cause violence, rap music causes violence.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't have enough dare to not do drugs. We don't have.
Mhm.
It's the next big scare tactic
Yeah.
by a group of people who have defined every generation with a new scare tactic. If online learning is what are making kids fall behind, I don't believe that. I believe it once again, like a bunch of them has said before, it's about parents being involved in their kids' life and education,
That's right.
and and also working with their teachers, to figure out a solution that helps get your child caught up. Every child is different. Every child needs that attention in order to get caught up. But
Hmm.
in the end, if your child is falling behind, it begs the question, are you as a parent actually involved in your kid's education, or are you just looking for a scapegoat?
No, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of extenuating factors like that
Absolutely.
come into the fact that it takes time away from you and your child, but at the baseline, you had a child because you wanted to raise a child. You need to raise the child because you can't expect the government to raise your child. It has to come down to you and your circle. Like your small circle has to support you, and that's some of the conversation you have with relatives and friends over time, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
You don't just toss your kid over to somebody and pay them $300 an hour and expect it to come back shiny and new. It will not
Right.
do that.
Right.
Other people have different agendas. You need to raise your kid, and that's a tough thing. I'm not trying to say like you're working three jobs and you're trying to raise three kids, but at some point the family creation process has to have more thought to it, you
And
know?
well, and here's the other thing too, is that you still have to figure out, you know, if there are other extenuating circumstances that are causing kids to fall behind.
Mhm.
I guarantee you that there are issues where there's not enough food in the home. I
Of
guarantee
course.
you there are issues where their connection to the internet is unreliable. I
Yeah,
guarantee you there are issues with probably some domestic issues that, would horrify most of us.
right.
So, all of you have to investigate all of this in a way, and the idea that somehow opening a brick and mortar school is going to fix all of that is not reasonable.
It
If
isn't.
anything, what this should be doing is highlighting what is happening, because now you have fewer things to look at. You don't have the same sort of issues of, bullying at the school.
Right.
What's going on at home? You don't have the same issues of children not being able to necessarily have access to their teachers, because the question begs, the question is begged is, were they accessing their teachers when they were at school, or no?
Mhm.
If they weren't accessing their teachers at school when they needed extra help, and they're not doing it now, it's not an issue of the online learning environment. It's an issue of the student needing to be educated and shown the path towards
What?
getting help.
Okay.
You know, it's there are so many factors involved, but the idea that somehow the online learning environment is the sole factor for this change, it's pretty questionable, and it leaves out the entire issue of, we're still in the middle of a pandemic. You have a bunch of kids that have this existential dread, and you have a bunch of teachers that either have or haven't adapted to the online learning environment in a way that is healthy for students. And what I mean by that is that they haven't taken in the entirety of the circumstances: pandemic, questionable online availability, the ability to access help when they need it, the other distractions that there are in their daily lives, be it anything from entertaining themselves on the internet and
Mhm.
on video game consoles to whatever family problems or mental health issues may be going on at home.
Yeah. I just wanna say that I think an educated America, an educated public is the only way that we get out of the solutions that we have because it's the only way to create an America that can make the right decisions, and I'll make a stand that I don't believe you should charge for education. I think you should charge for furthering an education. I think if a class is 6 months, right? 6 months of learning to learn something, then I think the child should have the option of picking the online classes that they want. I don't think we should be saying this is the regimen of things you need to learn. I think we should say, okay, if you want to learn baking, you're going to have to learn the math of it too. If you want to learn to lay concrete, you're going to have to learn the math of that too. I think that we should be letting people make the decisions about what they want to learn so that they are interested in it. You pick a college class, you should be able to pick your child's classes, the grade school classes, the middle school classes. And I
Mm,
think we need to create a world where somebody is always going to an online class and learning something new and then
mm,
deciding whether they want a 4-year education in that, a master's, a bachelor. But I don't think just finding something you should charge people for that. That you
I
have a
think.
further interest and expertise in it, yes, but not the
Mm,
initial get to know it, you know.
oh no, no, exactly. I do think that fundamentally the way that education needs to change in this system is there are some things that have to change. Now, in terms of like, grade school up to middle school, there are some things that you're just going to have standard
Hmm.
reading, writing,
Sure.
language arts, things like that. There are some, social studies, sciences. There's some things that you
Boom.
got to do. But the idea that, once you get into high school, that, you know there are going to be some kids that, math was never their subject, but
But
art was, or,
you still need to learn
maths and
consumer math. You still need to
right,
know.
exactly,
It's just
and
what math. You don't need to learn algebra if you're the guy driving a fork truck. You need to know geometry, you know?
or if, you're going to be, if you decide you want to be a chef, great.
Yeah.
What does food math look like?
Hmm.
That's
Yes.
business, simple business management skills. the
Yes.
the the reality is that, or great, some kids have decided that they want to learn concrete, or they want to learn excavation, they want to learn electrical, they want to learn plumbing. Fantastic. I had access to some of that when I was in school
Right.
because I had agricultural education, which meant that, I got to take classes on concrete, welding, plumbing. Granted, I lived on a farm and I did a lot of that anyways,
Right.
and I worked construction for my dad's company. I knew a lot of that stuff anyways, but that was where I could get my specialized education in some of that stuff.
Hmm.
And the reality is that we've put a lot of pressure on people to go for these advanced degrees to answer telephone calls and write emails. And that is
Yeah.
absolutely absurd. It's like,
Hmm.
you want to know why the student loan uh, fiasco that is coming looks the way it does. It's because we require a 4-year degree to do something that maybe requires 6 months worth of training.
That's just it. And I just think a person should be well-rounded by the time they get to 18 so they know what they want to do. They've
Hmm.
spent I mean they took those basic yeah, we I learned my ABCs. I did that. It didn't take me 6 months. It took me 3 months. I moved on and I moved on and I learned and we let people learn at their pace and learn what they want because the math of a baker to somebody interested in baking will make way more sense than the math of a forklift worker trying to figure out angles will
Or
to a
the math of
baker.
somebody who's interested in orbital physics.
Yes, right. We don't need to teach the basics of orbital physics math to somebody that wants to bake. And we don't need to teach measurements of baking to the orbital, you know what I mean? So
Exactly.
we need to let them go where we've
It's
spent.
this archaic idea that all children are somehow going to be, the next Einstein, and
Yes,
that's just not the reality.
a doctor, an engineer, where we want our
I think
children to
that
go.
every child should have the opportunity to
Yes.
become the next Einstein, or the next,
Yes.
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Me too.
Or but I don't think that is what we should be pushing,
No,
because the
we're
kids
not
that are
pushing at
going to
all. That's what I'm saying. We don't push at all. We put a set of things in front of them and let them choose. And if one thing isn't for them, then they move on to another thing that they can
exactly
excel at.
exactly, and the reality is that this online education system should be what allows us to
Yeah.
broaden those horizons, especially not just in large cities, but even in rural America too. Could you
Yes.
imagine if, if the kid in rural America who has grown up on a farm could actually take classes in orbital physics because they're that advanced?
Yes,
I
that's what
would have
I
been, I
wish.
probably would have been that kid that would have done orbital physics.
That's what I wish because I would have been something more than I was. I went through the work program and learned an industrial, area of pipes and forklifts and machines and printing presses. That's what I did. But, obviously I've turned into something different. And I wish I had continued an education as I was doing that, or had the opportunity to go to YouTube and learn coding when it was
Hmm.
new, or just anything when I have an idea right now, just randomly being like, I wonder if I'd be interested in this. I don't want to
Hmm.
spend $5,000 and go to Phoenix University and then drop out because I realized I wasn't good at communications or,
Right.
marketing.
Or, or even in those realms where some of those degrees will get you laughed out of the building.
Yeah.
Like a lot of places that I've worked, you show up if you show up with no experience and a degree from University of Phoenix, you're getting laughed out of the building.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but you should also,
Those degrees, the only time anybody accepted those degrees was like if you had 10 years of experience and you had to have a degree in order to move up. And
yeah,
that should say something. That should say something.
yes. But I think the education system needs to be revamped and it needs to be more user friendly that way.
And that's the other thing too is that the current system, and I've had this conversation with my kids a few times, is that this whole concept and idea that we have to constantly be memorizing something in order to take a test,
Yeah.
so that way we forget it because we're memorizing something new in order to take a test.
Hmm.
That works for people like me, where I
Right.
can read something, remember it, and apply it really quickly.
Right.
But even Einstein said never memorize what you can look up.
Right.
And especially now when you have this, sitting right in front of us, where you literally have so many answers to so many questions that you can search out the answer. Like what we said in my master's program was is that, you know, we didn't have all the answers. We were just better at Googling the questions than most people were, and
Yeah.
then taking the answers that were given and manipulating them to fit our needs.
Exactly.
I mean, that's just really all there is to it. We're not reinventing the wheel by any stretch of the imagination. We just know how to access the answers and ask the questions so that way we can get closer to the answer that we need.
I'm really bad at that, by the way, so I totally get what you're saying. I'm the person that doesn't. I have a paragraph. I'm typing in the Google line a paragraph just to get my question, you know.
Mhm.
So there is people that excel at that stuff.
And that's just it is that my world is I don't have that answer. Let me ask a couple people. They don't have that answer. Let's turn to Google. I
Right.
guarantee you somebody's asked this question somewhere.
But is there any time when you ask a question that you shouldn't just be asking Google? Like anything that just ruins conversation because you can't ask anybody other than "What do you do? Who are you?" in the basic question. You can't be like, "So, does the moon actually, whatever today?" You can't do that. You can't start conversation with I don't know how to explain that. Well, I lost my train of thought. I don't ask people as many things because I'm more self-sufficient and just say, "Hey Siri" or "Hey Google."
And I mean that's kind of the tough one because I think you run into two problems. Number one is that you have people that expect either an overly simplistic answer or an overly complex answer.
Yeah.
And sometimes, what you're looking for is exactly the opposite. I can't tell you how many times I've been looking for a complex answer only to be told, no, you just need to do this.
Right.
And you're like, there's no way that'll click, son of a bitch.
Yep.
Or you're like, oh, well, it should just be this. And then when you realize that there's like four parts that are failing at the same time, you're like, oh, okay, well, I guess we got to go back to the drawing board on this one.
Right.
And that's just the reality of it is you have to have some ability to understand that sometimes the answer isn't as simple as you want, sometimes the answer is far more complex than you want. but you
Yeah.
have to be willing to learn it and understand it and then adapt it for your needs.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the solution is complicated, but the answers and the steps are simple.
Usually.
Honestly, once you start getting into something, it's just simple steps to get to where you wanna go.
Usually, yeah.
Yeah.
It's and the weird logic behind it it's interesting when you start to figure out which person you are. Are you the person that is looking for an overly complex answer when the
Mm.
simple one would suffice? Or are you the
Yes.
person that thinks that this should be simple and it's actually pretty complex?
I think it comes down to experience. Like you
Mhm.
should you should be happy at failing at something because I think you try for those complicated answers when you're learning something, but you end up with the simple answers and solutions once you know
Mhm.
it. So I think everybody should just get used to being embarrassed and failing because that means you're trying something new. And the more you try it, the better you'll get at it, and the sooner you can move on to something else, and that becomes second nature.
Well, and that's where one of my favorite quotes comes back from Teddy Roosevelt. The best thing you can do is the right thing. The next best thing you can do is the wrong thing because at least you'll learn something.
Yeah.
And the worst thing you can do is nothing.
But I mean, I got my ass kicked when I first got Mortal Kombat. I'm pretty good at it, you know? And then I could not fucking live in Grand Theft Auto. What the hell is going on? And now I'm pretty good at it. So there's a learning curve to everything. You don't start out, I think America thinks you start out as an expert. Like people are just told you'll find your gift, and when you find it it's going to be effortless. No, it's a series. When opportunity meets preparation, that's success. You
Hmm.
prepare, and you prepare in a bunch of different ways if you don't know what you're going to be successful at, and that's the way to do it. It's called the Renaissance man, the man that knows everything, the jack of all trades, you know.
And you have to be comfortable with the fact that you're not going to know everything, and that
Yeah.
and that you're going to end up failing. Like the idea that you should feel stupid for failing should
Mm.
only apply if you didn't try anything.
Right, exactly.
You just thought that the situation would work itself out,
Yep.
and then it didn't because you knew something was going wrong and you chose to do nothing. And
Oh.
that's really what it boils down to is that if you do nothing and it goes wrong and you knew it was going wrong, that's on nobody else.
Or if you decide to ask somebody else to validate your decision and they tell you the wrong decision, that's not on them either. It's your life and you need to take care of your stuff in your way. You can't rely on other people to answer all of your questions for you all the time.
And the reality is that you make choices and you have to objectively gauge whether or not it's working. We do
Yep.
it all the time in business. you
Mhm.
you you make a choice and you watch and see how it works. You might have done some testing to kind of give yourself an idea to see what might work better, but once you've fully engaged it, you're constantly looking at it, monitoring, making sure that that decision
Mhm.
works.
Yeah.
And if that decision suddenly isn't working, then it's on you to figure out, number one, is this something you can fix? Number two, do you scrap it? Number three,
Mhm.
you know, are you at the mercy of whatever fates may be?
Right. But I mean, I always think to
But
myself,
most of the time though, it's you really do just look at what's working, what's not working, and you adjust from there.
yeah, that's critical thinking, and I don't think people are taught that. You know what I mean? I think they're just taught to breeze through it and catch what they catch and
Oh,
go through life. But life is learning and work, and I think more people need to just get used to that.
absolutely. You learn something every day. And if my 93-year-old grandfather, you know, was of the mindset that you could learn something new every day, there is really no excuse.
Yeah.
It might not be, orbital physics, but you can always learn something new every day.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is that everything begins and everything ends. So if it's not going the right way, that just means try something else. You know what I mean? That's all. Not everything is for you. I tried juggling. Guess what? With one eye, that does not work. So I moved on. I tried other things.
Mm,
I watched Ragnarok. I get into that.
right. Or, one eye, I played different 7 different instruments. The reality is that, yeah, I'm not necessarily a grandmaster at any single one of them, but I
Hmm.
enjoy learning all of them.
Yeah, because that was an easy path for you. You learned, you failed, you succeeded faster than you gave up.
Yep.
Yep,
So
good for you. What else did we need to talk about?
I think that's pretty much all I've got for right now.
Okay. We didn't touch on Dr. Seuss, and that's okay with me. We touched on the overall thing of it. I didn't really
Yep.
want to get into
I mean,
Republicans.
Dr. Seuss, let's just say this. There's a bunch of people out there that want businesses to make their own decisions. And when businesses make their own decisions, then they start scream crying, "No, not like that."
Yeah,
The Dr. Seuss Foundation looked at a bunch of books. They're not canceling Dr. Seuss, dear
no.
Christ. There were 6 books that they were like, the imagery is a little questionable in this, so we're not going to publish it anymore.
Well, yeah.
Great, cool. That's awesome. More power to them to make decisions on things like that.
How do we improve costs? Well, let's eliminate the lowest sellers. Okay, let's take these 6 books that are earning under our threshold and get rid of them.
And
Not,
when I looked at the list of books, out of the 6 books, there was actually only one that I knew.
yeah, I don't know. I didn't even look at it because I just think it's free market. I also think it makes those editions of those books now more valuable because they've been discontinued. And I also believe that any right wing extremist could say, hey, well, if you're not going to publish those, can we publish those? So you can always attempt to buy the rights to publish those books. You know what I mean? It's not over.
Right.
It's just what the company is deciding to do and what another company is not deciding to do. Because it
And
doesn't
that's
matter.
and that's the weird reality of this too is that, you know, if looking at some of the images, I was like, ooh, okay, I can see why they're going to discontinue those.
Okay.
It's like, as a kid, I didn't see anything wrong. Like in the one book, I was like, the one that I actually, I was like, I don't remember anything being wrong with that. And then I looked at the image, I was like, oh, okay, I can see why they're not, it's not like the Cat in the Hat got discontinued. My
Right.
personal favorite was the 1st of October. I loved that book.
Nice. I
But but okay, so 6 books that had questionable illustrations on them, and he's decided, and the foundation has decided that they're not going to do those 6 books. Great. You cannot sit there and advocate for free market, and when a company decides what they're not going to do anymore,
right.
it doesn't live up to what you think free market is. I'm sorry, that's not how this works. It's the same group of people were the ones that were scream crying. It's like businesses should be able to decide who comes into their companies and shops. And businesses went, okay, you can come in and shop, but you got to wear a mask. And they all went, no, not like that.
Right,
It's like, I'm
right.
sorry, you don't get this both ways. You can't sit down and say companies should be able to decide what risks they're willing to take, and then get pissed when they decide what risks they're willing to take.
That's right, because that's their decisions, right? New Coke, right?
And so it's like, great. If you don't like the decision, you can shop somewhere else,
That's
or
what
you can
that's what we
adhere.
need to learn, yes.
It's like, great, you don't want to shop at Costco because Costco requires you to wear a face mask. You know what? Screw it. Buy everything online through Amazon or through Walmart. Go shopping at Walmart. They don't seem to care whether or not you wear a mask.
Or yeah,
Do you adjust your shopping in order to fit your expectations of what you expect.
yes, exactly.
And you cannot blame businesses for making the decisions to do
Yeah,
what they're doing. It's like, I'm sorry that you don't think that this is a health crisis, but those companies genuinely can't afford, half to 3/4 of their workforce being out at once
yeah.
because of a preventable disease.
Or 70% of the population avoiding their store because 30% of the population is allowed to go in without a mask.
Right.
It's just basic math. More of us believe in masks than don't.
And that's just it, is that this isn't a very hard concept to figure out.
Right.
The reality was,
Unless you're raised on privilege. Sorry.
right. The reality is that, much like as something that you've probably talked about in the low vision forum, when it comes to, like, for example, the ADA, and the question is about accommodations and reasonable
Uh-huh.
accommodations.
Right.
Reasonable accommodations doesn't mean that they have to do what you want them to do. It means that they have to take a reasonable effort to accommodate you, and there are various factors that can deem those efforts unreasonable.
Right.
Nobody
It-
is saying you can't buy groceries if you can't go into
right.
the store. Your option is buy groceries somewhere else or buy them online and get curbside
Yes.
pickup.
A
You know,
reasonable accommodation is to create equality, not superiority, though. And that's
exactly.
what's important. I might get a shopper at the store, but that's because that brings me to the level of a sighted person. So, yes, a reasonable accommodation is I don't want to wear a mask, then don't wear a mask, don't come in our store. That's reasonable.
Yeah, nobody's saying you can't buy your groceries at that
Right,
store. You just can't go through and pick them out. You have
right.
to have somebody. Well, what if the things that I'm going to get are too personal? I'm like, it is 2021. If you think that somebody is going to be offended that they're having to pick out your Astroglide and your
Right.
condoms, you need to get with the program.
Yeah.
It's the same group of people that see shame in, I can't tell you how many weird looks I get when I go buy pads and tampons as a
Oh.
dude.
Well, I got a
I
woman.
have
That's what I think. I got a
I
woman.
have three menstruating women in my house.
Yeah.
Like, this is not a thing. I have four sisters. I have so many women in my life that there is no shame in buying these products for the people who need them.
There should
So
be
if
no
you
shame in that.
exactly, exactly, it's a necessity.
If you're bringing over Astroglide and condoms, you're gonna
And
see a
bringing over
smile.
Astroglide and come, huh?
You,
Well, man, we're just skipping
you're
the
gonna see a
condoms.
smile on my face when you drop it off. You know what I mean? Either
But
that, or
that's
I'm naked with a 20 strapped to my penis and asking you to come in.
hey, but that's just it though. Is that if you feel shame for buying something, that's not on anybody else but you, and you
Yeah,
need to figure out what the root of that shame is. Because guess what? People have sex. We all know it.
yeah, and it's just not
People
that.
menstruate. We know that.
Yeah, and men care about their women. I have no problem. I was at the store like taking pictures for my wife of the different ones, because
Right.
she gave me a picture, but it was of and I'm like, I don't know this one, and yeah, I'll do that. I have no problem with that. Support your woman. Next man up. It doesn't matter what it is. If she needs you to lift a car because she's doing the fucking shopping, lift the car because that's your next job, you know?
Right. And that's just it. Is that, you know, if you feel any sort of shame for buying something,
Mhm.
figure out what the root of that shame is, because you shouldn't feel shame for buying whatever necessities that you need.
Yeah.
You know, it's that, whether you think it is private or not. I mean, let's be realistic. If you're feeling shame for buying condoms or for buying lube in a public place, mind you,
Right.
the issue at hand then is your problems with buying those in a public place. Guess what? You can order them online where it's pretty anonymous and have
Kinda.
it shipped to your more anonymous than your face standing there staring at the bottles of Astroglide and deciding
Yeah.
whether or not you want icy hot or not.
Oh, as a blind guy, dude, I have gotten the worst brands of condoms ever. But,
Hmm.
like shopping online, I bought this girl a wonderful toy. And then when I was on Facebook, I realized that that toy was now an advertisement in my ads, and it was being promoted to some of my friends as well. Like, hey, your friend likes this.
Yep.
So there, you got to remember that not everything is always private. Going to the store and paying for something is actually the most private way because only one person will know that you got that.
And even then, what is the issue there?
Yeah,
Like,
what is the issue? If you need it, get it.
exactly. There is nothing wrong with it, and that shame is something that has been bestowed upon you unwillingly,
Right.
whether or not you realize that. Because everybody's sexual experience is different. Everybody's needs are different.
Mm-hmm.
And the shame that you feel in getting those needs met shouldn't be a thing.
Right. Well, the product exists because people use it,
Mhm.
whatever it is, right?
Or people need it.
Yeah, you're not the only one. If you were the only one dealing with the problem, there wouldn't be a solution to your problem already available.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the reality is that, you know, there the reasonable accommodation is out there. And if I could get my shit together to have a grocery list that I pay somebody $15 an hour to wander up and down the aisle of the grocery store to get
Mhm.
that all, picked out, bagged for me,
Right.
and pay for that. And all I got to do is after work, show up to the grocery store, pop the trunk, and they drop everything that I need in. Awesome.
That's
Great.
nice.
Somebody is getting paid to do my shopping for me. So that way, when I come home, I'm spending time with my family, not having to relegate my weekends or my nights to go doing something else,
Sure.
like driving to the grocery store, wandering up and down the aisles looking for things that I need. And then if I need to make any small trips to the grocery store, great. I can handle that.
Me too. I like that. I just don't think that I, the person that can't drive and wander the aisles because I can't get there, should be charged $1 more per product because I can't do that. That's where the inequality comes in.
Mhm.
So I think there should be something where you say that's a reasonable accommodation to me, that a store um, helping a legally blind person or a person that can't leave their apartment, wheelchair bound, you know, that they have a reasonable accommodation of not having to spend like 60 to $80 more on what they buy.
I think, and I would agree with you that you're right there as well. I think that, the question of, equality versus equitable is always going to be a huge thing.
Mhm.
Equality says that, all of us pay the same amount to have somebody shop for our groceries for us and drop them
Right.
off, at our house or in our vehicle. Equitable would be that, yeah, I've got to pay to have somebody do my shopping for me, but maybe you don't because physically you're not capable of doing it.
Right.
And then the question is how do companies, because once again I think that this is,
Yeah.
it's not an issue that the feds need to be diving into, because they're going to do a bad job of this like they do with so many
Nope.
other things.
No, it's the free market deciding whether we're a viable base or not.
Hmm. And so, you find out which companies are going to be equitable about, ensuring that your needs are met.
Yep.
If one company is willing to, say, hey, yeah, we're totally going to, you know, give you a rate reduction, or
Yep.
yeah, no, you're not going to be charged for this, or, whatever that might look like.
Mhm.
It's hard to say,
Yeah.
and especially as companies figure out what that efficiency looks like. For all we know, in the next 20 to 25 years, grocery stores could be entirely automated to the point where, you have an app for you that, is for low vision disability.
Yep.
You pick out everything that you need, and rather than having a person wander up and down the shelves, you have automated pickers that grab each of those things for you, and you
Yep.
just have somebody walk that out to a vehicle for you, or you have home delivery deliver it to you, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
I mean, you see that currently, like in the medical industry, where when things get ordered, they have automated pickers that pull things from each of these different bins, so that way those
Right.
things get delivered to the hospital.
Yeah,
There's
cool.
no reason why that couldn't be done, for people with low vision disability, or
Well,
any
everybody.
disability where they can't, functionally move around.
Well,
So,
like DoorDash offered 30% off pickup, right? And I sent them a message and I was like, that's discrimination. Without offering an equal offer to me for delivery, you're saying that I can't get the same offer. And then a week later, they offered two 15% off deliveries. And I was like, that, exactly, that's it.
there you
That's
go.
equality.
And that's just it, is that there are solutions out there, and you support the companies that find those solutions for you, that are
Yes.
willing to embrace those solutions. And as companies learn what makes more sense,
Hmm.
the fact of the matter is that, there's some of us that are going to be okay with paying less for our stuff because we get to go manually pick what we want.
Right.
There are some of us that are going to be okay with paying more, so that way we don't have to pick because we just don't want to spend the time.
Yep.
And then there are companies that are going to realize that there is a benefit to picking the stuff for people with disabilities, so that way they can get that money in their store rather than having that money go to a different store that'll do that for them.
Well, yes, because if I go into the store, ask for a shopper, give her my list, have her pick my stuff, help me check out, and I leave, I pay $60 less than if I make an online list and
Hmm.
stay home, right? So
Right.
that's what I'm saying. It just doesn't make sense. It benefits you to keep me out of your store, like, and let her work at her pace, or I don't, there's a benefit there. You don't have to charge me more because I'm not there to watch her do it.
Right, exactly.
Nice.
And that's and as you call those things out, it doesn't hurt to tag multiple companies when you tag that
Right.
out. Because guess what? If Safeway screws up, but let's say that Kroger,
Mm-hmm.
gets called out on it, and they're like, okay, let's make this change before we get bit in the ass by this.
Right.
you know your options are to be pissed at everybody for not meeting your needs, or to
Mm-hmm.
be pissed at one person or one group for not meeting your needs while educating the rest of them how to meet your needs.
Well, and you have to offer them the solution. You can't just say,
Exactly.
this is my complaint. You have to say, this is my complaint and this is what I'm asking as a resolution. And then it's up to them to say, no, but here, or yeah, okay.
Right. It's like, okay, well, maybe we can't do that, but we can do this. Does that
Right,
meet your needs? Great. And somebody else might go, okay, we don't like that solution. We'll do one better. And as soon as
right.
they figure it out, hey, great. You know what? Fantastic.
That's right. That's
Or,
that's capitalism. It's just I don't think we're using capitalism the right way, you know?
well, I think that's the issue is that we get so used to the whole, well, we just have to take what the company gives us,
Yeah, right.
rather than educate the company as to what your needs actually are.
I love that. And I'll just leave it on the Northern toilet paper or Charmin toilet paper. Northern is owned by the Koch brothers, and the Koch brothers donate very heavily to the Republican Party, while Northern donated 70,000 to Joe Biden and 30,000 to Donald Trump. And I thought, I'm going to buy Charmin because that's owned by Kimberly Clark. And so that's what I did. And I made a choice with my wallet, to buy that brand of toilet paper. So I think we
Hmm.
all need to do that. We all need to do that
Hmm. Absolutely.
and support each other too. You know what I mean? Like you have the right to buy whatever toilet paper you want, Joe.
I mean, as long as it's not freaking sandpaper.
Sometimes.
Ugh. I've had enough sandpaper on my asshole for one lifetime.
Yeah, me too. I just wanted to say thank you for giving me last week to get Inspirations Beyond Disabilities up and going. I think it's so cool. We have another episode coming out tomorrow, and it's a lot of cane talk, and you would think that's weird, but it actually, even if you can see, it's a great conversation to listen to. We talk about shopping because Brittany's a fashionista and how to do that when you can't see and creating a fashion style with that. So it's a pretty good episode. I think they're pretty good episodes. Thanks for giving me that
Fantastic.
week, and I hope your family and you are doing well.
Everybody's good here. We're this close to the vaccine, and I would think we're all still on alert, but we're so close, and we're looking forward to life post
Yeah,
vaccine.
yeah.
I
I
mean,
want to
it's not
say
going to be post COVID,
no.
post vaccine.
I want to say though, like I don't want to be the guy that dies in May on May 31st of COVID when everybody gets vaccinated that next day. I want to keep being precautious and taking my safety measures because I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the last COVID death, and you shouldn't either.
No, and that's just it. Is that unfortunately somebody's got to be that, and just hope that that last death is sooner rather than later.
Me too, but I don't think like people in Texas and Florida and Mississippi should be like, let's open up and try and be dead before May 31st. I don't like that, man. If you live in those states, please just stay away from people, wash your hands, sanitize, wear a mask, do what you got to do to survive a month or two more. Please.
I think that's one of those things where we can talk about, mandates and their failure. Because there's a really good, I think there's a really good topic to talk about there, but that's for another time.
Okay, it's up to you.
So,
Thanks for being here, Jeffrey.
hey, it's always good to be here.
You're my hero this week.
Woo! I'm glad to be somebody's hero.
Nice. All right, I'll just do some wrap up for the live stream and then bye everybody.
Catch you later.
Nice. I forget there's two endings. There's a live stream ending and there's the podcast ending. So I know no, I'm just going to tell that people can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud and YouTube. Subscribe there. Thanks for being here. Bye.
Bye.